Chapter 11. Darkness and Rage. Edgar woke with a start, as if out of a bad dream. He looked around, expecting to see the comfort of his bedroom, only to find himself dirty and cold on the floor of Murray's shop. The events of the previous night came rushing back into his mind, a cruel reminder that the nightmare was real. The sun hadn't crept over the horizon yet. Edgar rubbed his eyes and looked down at Blue. The hearth was still warm, so Edgar edged closer to it, rubbed his arms to get blood flowing. The sky lightened and Edgar's senses sharpened as he stretched his body. Suddenly, he realized Tifa should be in the shop. Murray had sold the other puppies because they were too much for him to take care of, but he had kept Tifa. Edgar walked around the shop and back into Murray's living space, but the wolfhound was nowhere to be found. Edgar wondered if he should look outside for Tifa, but then he heard the front door to the shop slam shut. He spun around to find an evil yellow grin staring him in the face.
Well, well, look who's back without his blacksmith for protection.
Pritchard Barton stood in the dim light with his arms folded.
If you're looking for that old wolfhound, well, she ain't around to help you neither.
What did you do with Tifa? Edgar growled.
Sold her to a traveling merchant, Pritchard said. Didn't think that idiot blacksmith would mind. Seemed like he had his concerns elsewhere.
Pritchard looked down at Blue.
Maybe I'll sell your dog, too.
Edgar's blood boiled, and he clenched his teeth.
You're not going to touch my dog, he said. Or You'll what, Shine? Pritchard asked. Just what do you think a puny little scab like you is going to do, huh?
Edgar's hand went down to his belt and found the dagger Murray had given him. He withdrew it and pointed it directly at Pritchard's head.
Don't touch my dog,
Edgar shouted. Pritchard laughed, unfazed by Edgar's attempt at bravery. He looked at the dagger in Edgar's hand and then looked toward the hearth. There he found a log only burning at one end. Pritchard slowly edged his way to the fire, and as he retrieved the log, Edgar was caught off guard and stepped back.
Come on, Shine, Pritchard said and brandished the log. Let's fight for the dog. It probably doesn't want you for a master anyway, you weakling. I bet that dog doesn't even like you. Why don't you just run back to your mommy? Go run to her bed and cry that you had a bad dream.
Edgar's mind flashed back to the rapier as it pierced Murray's throat. The blood pouring down Murray's chest, his mother crying, and Joe's eyes like fire.
No!
Edgar screamed. He lunged at Pritchard with the dagger clutched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. The bully sidestepped Edgar's thrust and countered by plunging the smoldering log into Edgar's face. Edgar dropped the dagger, screamed, and fell to the ground. Edgar moaned, writhing on the ground in pain. He brought his hands up to his face but couldn't touch it. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't see anything. The world was black. Sound trickled back into his consciousness slowly. He heard yelling and what sounded like growling. The sounds were so faint Edgar wasn't sure if he was really hearing things or if the pain was driving him mad. He strained against it, and suddenly his hearing came back in a rush.
Get off me, you mutt!
Pritchard yelled. As soon as Pritchard had hit Edgar with the log, Blue had attacked the bully, latching onto his arm. Pritchard had fallen to the ground, and the dog thrashed his jaws, trying to tear Pritchard to shreds. Edgar could hear everything perfectly now, though he could still see only blackness. Blue growled ferociously, and Edgar could sense he was out for blood. Edgar fought against the pain and scrabbled to his knees. Then he heard scraping metal across the stone floor, and he knew Pritchard had found the dagger. Edgar was paralyzed in fear.
Blue!
He yelled, but it was too late. Pritchard lifted the dagger and stabbed the dog that pinned him to the ground. Blue yelped and fell away. In a panic, Edgar crawled through the blackness to where he had heard Blue's cry. He groped at the air, and then he felt the dog, just a warm, fuzzy heap upon the rock-hard floor. Edgar ran his hand over Blue's body and felt the wet flow of blood.
Blue,
Edgar sobbed.
No.
There was no sound or movement from the dog. Blue was dead.
That bastard dog deserved it, Pritchard shouted. It bit me, Shine. Your ugly dog bit me, and I'm bleeding. Serves it right it's dead.
Edgar no longer felt his pain. The sound of Pritchard's voice grew more and more faint until Edgar heard nothing but a low hum and the pounding of his own heart. That sound grew louder in his head until it shook his body with every new beat. His legs and arms tingled with a spreading warmth. It reached his stomach and nauseated him. He shuddered, and the heat intensified. It reached his head, filling the blackness with fire. Edgar slowly rose to his feet and turned toward Pritchard. Every muscle in his body was screaming for blood, as if each one had its own insatiable hunger. The drumming of his heart grew louder and louder in his head until it was deafening. He clenched his teeth, and then the blackness of Edgar's world exploded into a white rage. Screeching like a wild animal, Edgar leapt at Pritchard and pinned him to the floor. The bully screamed, but Edgar heard nothing. He balled his fists together and pounded Pritchard's face as hard as he could, feeling warm blood gush over his hands. Yet Edgar did not stop. He dug at Pritchard's eyes, ripping, tearing. He bent his head to Pritchard's throat and sunk his teeth in as far as he could. The drumming in Edgar's head never ceased, and he continued to pound Pritchard relentlessly. Now the bones of Pritchard's face cut into Edgar's hands, yet still the rage would not let him go. He had to annihilate Pritchard Barton. The villagers heard the screams and were struck with horror. The screams of a boy would bring any good person running, but these were not the screams of a boy in trouble. These were the screams of a feral beast, a demon, a fiend. The frightened villagers proceeded with caution as they came closer to the blacksmith's shop. Once they saw Edgar, it took 3 grown men to pry him from what was left of Pritchard Barton. Edgar never stopped thrashing. His screams became more carnal with each new breath. The men carried Edgar to the doctor, and only after he was given a sedative did he calm down. Slowly, the white rage dissolved to blackness, and Edgar faded into a deep sleep.